Welcome to Think Big with Michael Zellner, powered by Platinum Jewelers. My guest for episode 136 is Memphis mayoral candidate and president and CEO of Downtown Memphis Commission, Paul Young. Paul was born and raised in the Oak Haven area of Memphis, Tennessee. He has a BS in electrical engineering from the University of Tennessee at Knoxville, a Master of City Planning, and a Master of Science in Business Administration from the University of Memphis. He is the former City of Memphis Housing and Community Development Director, and he is a proven leader and has the endorsement of mayor from former Shelby County Mayor Mark Luttrell, former head of the Orpheum Pat Halloran, and also entrepreneur and the mainly responsible for revitalizing Beale Street back in the 80s, John Elkington. Paul, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
My pleasure. So you grew up in Memphis. What do you remember most about your life as a kid growing up here?
It was a beautiful childhood. I grew up in the Oak Haven area. I remember having a diverse range of friends and, playing in our parks. I also remember as I became more of a teenager, the work that my father was doing in our community because we began opening up our church, which was formerly Pendleton. So some people may remember that back in the day. But we used to open up the gym for everybody in the community. And like we had some of the most intense pickup basketball games in the city right there in Oak Haven. But we did that, from the time I was about 13 until I was about 18.
And that makes you probably a very competitive person.
Yeah, I'm pretty competitive. I definitely am.
That's awesome.
People don't realize that about me, but yeah, I definitely am competitive.
Obviously there are many responsibilities and aspects of being the mayor of Memphis. And as I'm sure, as you know, I know, and most Memphians know, the main issue that almost everyone is concerned about right now is crime. Yeah. Criminals don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. So crime has nothing to do with politics.
Right.
You can't turn on the television, watch local news, open up your phone to a local news app or one of the neighborhood apps like Nextdoor every single day in Memphis and not, see or hear about crime. Yeah. You said, quote, "Crime will be a strong theme throughout my campaign because it is a critical issue for each of us and for the health of the city today and in our future." Yeah. Let's pretend it's day one of a Mayor Young administration. Where would you and your team start?
The first thing we're going to do is ensure that the public sees an urgency around solving this issue. And I believe that we proved that urgency by making sure that the public can visibly see us engaging all of the other stakeholders that are a part of the criminal justice process. Because, the general public probably doesn't connect the dots, but the mayor only controls one aspect of what it takes to keep our community safe. The mayor has oversight over the Memphis Police Department, and we're going to make sure that we're doing all the 21st century policing tactics. But I want to be the mayor where you're going to see us convening all of the other stakeholders, the district attorneys, the judges, even the school system, all of these other groups that impact public safety. We're going to show urgency together, similar to when we were in the pandemic and you saw the COVID-19 task force that was made up with the city, county, hospitals, nonprofits. All of us were working together every day to reduce the level of virus in our community. We need that level of urgency right now. And that's what we're going to bring day one of the Young administration.
One thing COVID did, as horrible as it was, but it did show that we can work together if we want to.
Absolutely. I mean, because we had to. There was no choice. There were too many lives that we're dependent on. And right now we have that same issue. I mean, every time someone is killed in our community, there's a family that's going through trauma. Yeah. There's the potential for retribution or revenge. And so it just piles on itself. One murder leads to another. Exactly. One fight leads to another. And so we have to reduce the level of violence in our community to reduce the trauma and pain that our young people are feeling each day.
How do you plan on to addressing the root causes of crime, such as, the high poverty level here, unemployment, and, lack of education for, so many in the community?
Yeah, I mean, it's a top priority for me. That's why I always tell people that as mayor, we need a mayor that has range. a mayor that can do multiple things. So we're going to show that urgency and making sure that we are holding people accountable for the crimes that are being committed. But we're also going to identify where can we have an impact on the root causes? Where are the young people that we already see showing indications of heading down the wrong path? And how can we make investments in those programs and ensuring that those programs also have wraparound components, meaning that we're not just addressing this young person who's headed down the wrong path, but we're also addressing the needs of their families. What resources does that mother, that father, that brother, that sister, what other resources are needed in that household to make them whole, whether that's utility assistance, rental assistance, workforce training, transportation, childcare. These are things that have been done in the past in a small way in projects that I've been a part of, like the South City Public Housing Redevelopment effort. And we're going to take those strategies and we're going to take them to a broader scale.
Yeah, because people forget that, once if a tragedy happens, goes by, there's a few weeks, people are still talking about it. And then everybody's life goes on and that family still has to stay around and they're dealing with it for, forever.
Yeah, they're dealing with it forever. And what I just try to remind people is that we have a bunch of traumatized people in our community that are traumatizing other people.
Yes, we do.
And that trauma doesn't go away because, their dad, their uncle, their brother was killed a year ago. It festers. And as it's festering, it manifests in other ways. It manifests in an outburst where, you have a fight or you pull out a gun and you want to prove yourself because you're still mad about the thing that happened 3, 4, 5 years ago. And so that's why we have to ensure that as we talk about root causes, we're talking about mental health. We're talking about counseling services so that people understand that there are different outlets to address, the pain that they're dealing with in their lives.
We've all heard the saying, a few bad apples can spoil the whole bunch. And unfortunately, if there's a bad police officer or a few officers that do something horrible, which as we know has happened many times, all police officers are affected by this because then a lot of people say, oh, well, all cops are bad. And of course, nothing could be further from the truth. There are, 800,000 police officers nationwide, and almost all of them leave their home each day to do the job right, protect the public from bad people. As mayor, what strategies will you employ to improve police and community relations and increase trust between law enforcement and the public?
I think one of our top goals has to be in increasing the trust and communication between the police and everyday citizens. And I believe that work starts with having real relationships. So getting back to having police officers in the communities. Now, I know that that's a challenge given the level of personnel that we have in the police department right now, but we should take every effort to make sure that we are doing all that we can to get more officers walking the beats, riding bikes on beats where they're closer to people, having events and activities. I can remember growing up where they had basketball leagues and things of that nature where MPD, the fire department, community centers had teams. I played on teams. Those types of things allow people to see each other as people and not just the badge and the responsibility. And I think that's one step. The other step is, some of the things that were approved by city council, which I understand makes policing a little bit harder because you can't stop people in the same manner that you could. But I think those steps and the willingness to take those steps from the Memphis Police Department does serve as a good faith effort to begin restoring that faith and trust. And then transparency is going to be the other thing, being transparent about what's happening, providing information as quickly as possible in alignment with the law and investigations and things like that. But when we can provide information, do it because that helps restore that trust.
Absolutely. I've always thought and said that I believe there are way more good people than bad ones. It's obviously impossible to eliminate crime. And I think some people think that, we should be able to eliminate it altogether. No way. I mean, if somebody wants to, attempt and be a criminal, they're going to be a criminal, and there's almost nothing that we could do about it. But, over the last, 15 years or so, social media has grown to the level that it has, and people can hide behind a phone, they can hide behind a computer and say almost anything they want to. I got on Twitter a few years ago and was on it for like 2 days and got off because the people on there are brutal and
Yeah,
mean and say
trust me, I
horrible
know I'm
things.
running a campaign right now, so
Yeah, I mean, it's just horrible. And
I get a
so,
lot of it.
what effect do you believe that social media has had on the increase in crime, especially with the younger generation that's only grown up to it?
I think it definitely contributes to it. I mean, what happens on social media is it's an alternative universe.
Yeah,
There's a whole community. There's a whole people have different personalities on social media, and you say things that you might not say in person because you have the anonymity of a screen. But the problem is that you ultimately end up facing those people that you were just talking about, and you have to prove some of the things that you said online. And so I have no doubt that contributes to it. I also think because of some of the bad behavior, the bullying, all of the machismo, the
yeah.
macho stuff that happens online. You gotta prove it, and that's what's happening in the streets in many instances.
Yeah, and many of these kids today, I mean, if they're under, if they're about 22 years old, they grew up, they were born after 9/11,
Yeah,
and all they've known is social media. So
yeah,
they want, likes and want people to impress people. So they go on
absolutely.
there and do things that they normally probably would never have done.
Absolutely. I mean, the validation that comes on social media is different than, we grew up with. I mean, I grew up social media started coming along right after I graduated from college.
Right.
But you have young people that literally don't know life without social media and, the endorphins that are released when, you get 200 people to like your post and, things of that
Right.
nature. You're chasing that high that you had from social media. So I definitely think it has an impact. I don't know what we do about it quite yet
Yeah.
because it's still a burgeoning field, but I definitely know that we're going to have to ensure that people understand the impact of things that are being said and the impact of this reality of life, because this is not Grand Theft Auto. This is not a
Yeah.
video game. Like, there is no coming back.
Yeah.
Once you make some of these choices, game over forever.
Right.
And I think, because of how some of our young people grow up, it's not always abundantly clear to them.
I agree completely. How will you work with local businesses and community organizations to help create jobs and economic opportunities for at risk youth and communities?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be pivotal towards our success as an administration, finding ways to incent companies to hire young people, looking at ways to support small businesses, whether that's through grants and loans to support their companies, and tying those grants and loans to hiring young people, maybe even for summer jobs. But I think those types of things are going to instill opportunities for money. I had an opportunity to serve on a panel with national recording artist, rapper NLE Choppa earlier this year, and bright young man. But we were talking, it was a youth town hall, and there was a young man that said he was about 15, 16 years old. He said that he had been stealing cars for 2 years and he enjoyed doing it. And we dug in and we said, well, why do you want to steal cars? And he said, well, because I'm bored and I need some money. And what I tell people is that those are two solvable problems. We can find ways for them to get money by working with the businesses in our community, and we can find activities by activating our community centers and our parks. And we just have to be committed to doing it. And even when the drama subsides, when the crime starts to reduce, we can't let our foot off the gas. We have to continue doing those things that have been working.
And that leads me to my next segment. There's hundreds of millions of dollars that we've gotten. There's going into Liberty Park, improving FedEx Forum, Tomley Park. All those things are great. I believe that unless we spend money in our poor neighborhoods developing really nice community centers for the children, with the right people running them, so these kids can see that they, have somebody there they can trust that has their best interest at heart. and see they have a chance to do something good and their lives not turn to gangs and drugs. Unless we do that, crime's going to continue to get worse, because we see on TV now 11 and 12 and 13-year-olds with guns,
Mhm.
that, years ago, we just didn't hear about things like that. What are your thoughts on that? And do you have some plans for some of those poor areas?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be vital for us to find ways to activate our parks and our community centers with activities that are going to engage our young people. Thinking about how we can extend the hours. I saw a program in St. Louis where they were doing lock-ins at the community center, where they had young people that were spending the night there and playing games and sports and things of that nature. We have to think outside the box, because we have removed a lot of the things that I did for fun when I was young.
Right.
Playing free play and all those different things in our communities. And we've removed those things, and we're surprised that our young people are going out busting car windows for fun.
Right.
15-year-olds are going to find something to do. And we might not always like what they're going to do, but we can be intentional about programming spaces for them to do things that are not harmful, that are nurturing. And I think our community centers and parks are going to be vital to that. I also think that we don't have to always think about it being staffed by city government. There are plenty of nonprofits that have ideas, they have activities, they just don't have spaces to execute their vision. And so we should be pairing those ideas with the spaces that we currently have. And that's something that, I'm deeply interested in making sure we have happen all across our city.
Something I read online about I think you had either maybe gotten involved with or been to Omaha, Nebraska with the police department and had some
Mhm.
ideas of some
Yeah.
things that they did there to help reduce the crime. What were some
Yeah,
of those
yeah,
things?
yeah. So that's something that I hadn't been there, but we've been reading up and studying on, some of the strategies that they've done to engage the public around reducing crime. They've established somewhat of a table similar to what I talked about earlier, like this this round table where they're all of the entities are working together on a regular basis to make sure that they're monitoring data, they're looking at where the crime is surging, and they're strategizing on who the people are that are involved in the crime or potential crime, and they're activating nonprofits, they're activating the police force, they're taking on a host of tactics, and they're doing it in a much more holistic way through that collaboration. And that's the world that I see for Memphis. I see us being a space where we can reduce the crime. We're a very relational city. We are some of the best people in this country when it comes to being able to connect to each other. And I think if we can connect the dots, we can make sure that we have people that are going to address the violence before it happens, if we can get our act together through collaboration.
I tell people all the time. I mean, you look at what goes on in the FedEx Forum in the Memphis Grizzlies game, and all the
Yeah.
people cheering and hollering and high-fiving and hugging and clapping of all different ages and races and religions, and no one's thinking about politics, no one's thinking about crime, everybody's having a good time. And it just shows that if we want to get along, if we want to be able to do things like that, we can.
Yeah, we can. I mean, I said early on in my tenure on this campaign trail that I wanted this campaign to feel like a Grizzlies game, because
Oh,
it
mhm.
reflects the best of Memphis. It is
Absolutely.
it shows it's who we are as a community, and that's what this campaign has been about. That's what it's going to take to solve our challenges. Is someone who is uniting us, and everybody working towards a common goal. I firmly believe that. We are not a divided community. We sometimes let issues get in the way of, our direct connections to each other. But if we have the right person that's pushing us and galvanizing us around these common challenges, we're going to be able to overcome it.
Are you shopping for a new watch, an engagement ring, any kind of jewelry at all? What's up, Memphis? This is Jaren Jackson Jr. from the Grizzlies, encouraging you all to shop where I shop, Platinum Jewelers here in Memphis. Platinum Jewelers has a big selection of earrings, stockable rings, luxury watches, necklaces, bracelets, really whatever you need. 9387 Poplar next to Fresh Market in Germantown. So if you need anything jewelry related, go to my spot, Platinum Jewelers.
One thing that I read a lot online is how sick and tired of people are of criminals that get low bail or no bail. They're back on the street almost right away. They continue to, commit both violent and non-violent crimes because many times they know there's few consequences for their actions. You said, quote, every night too many Memphis families look across the dinner table at an empty chair or make plans to celebrate an upcoming graduation or Mother's Day, missing a loved one who would be there if not for a criminal act, unquote. How do you plan on keeping these criminals, off the street when we have, a city council and sometimes judges and other people that seem to have done the opposite, which is, should be protecting the public?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be constantly advocating for stiffer penalties for those violent and repeat offenders and making sure that those that are unleashing terror on our communities are spending a sufficient amount of time in jail. I think it's really, really important that we get the bad guys off the streets because I always like to remind people that it's 1% of our population, 1% of our population that's doing all the crime. And they are the ones that have branded our city as a bad city. Yes. They are the ones that, we have to, tug and pull when it comes to economic development to try and recruit companies to our community because they hear that negative narrative of 1% of our population. And we have to make sure that we are addressing it. And I'm not someone that believes that jail in itself is a deterrence, but I do believe that it's necessary punishment. And my hope is that we can work with our county jails and our state jails so that we have stronger programs so that while those people that are incarcerated, while they're in there, they're being changed, they're being reformed. Because the reality is that most of those people are coming home. Most of the folks that come and go to jail are getting out. And the question that we have is, will they come out better or worse? And so, we have to address it from all of the fronts. So stiffer penalties and making sure that we are ensuring that jail becomes transformational in the lives of the people that are there.
Right. In my opinion, we need more police officers in our city than we have right now. We've lost around 500 or so over the last 10 years. I believe we have somewhere around 2,000 now. The standards have been lowered, to be a policeman here. And we saw the horrible, unfortunate circumstances of what happens when you do that, earlier this year. Sign-on bonuses haven't seemed to have worked as well as maybe they had hoped. And I personally know many police officers that walk on eggshells now and doing their job because they're afraid of losing their livelihood and their pension. What can your administration do to maybe help change that?
Well, I think when it comes to our police officers, we want to make sure that Memphis Police Department becomes the shining star on the hill when it comes to police forces in the region. This is something that, from my conversations with officers, this used to be the case prior to the benefits being cut. And once those benefits were cut, officers logically said, why would I be in the most dangerous part of our region policing when I could go to what appears to be a safer part for the same amount of money? And so they're making, logical decisions for a family. And so we have to make sure that we are offsetting that by making sure they're the highest paid, that they're the best equipped. So looking at the technology that we're using, that we're the most efficient, making sure that we're removing things that suck their time away. So if they're spending a whole lot of time having to process paperwork and things of that nature, we want to get those things out of their way. And I believe that the current administration has been doing a lot of work to get the numbers up. And I think it's a step in the right direction. And we just have to keep that energy. And so that our officers feel appreciated. We know that, it's a small, just like I mentioned, 1% of people defining who our city is through bad acts. The same thing applies in the police force.
Absolutely.
We want to make sure that we're rooting out that culture that allows individuals like that to feel emboldened enough to do what we saw during that Tyree Nichols tragedy. But we also want to acknowledge the fact that most officers aren't doing that. And so, in order to help those good officers, we have to make sure that we're rooting out that negative culture and those individuals that don't do the right thing, because they make it hard for the ones that are doing the right thing.
Exactly. Some people I know are afraid to leave their home, go to the grocery store, or even, put gas in their car these days. Yeah. We used to think, crime was just in certain areas, but now it has no boundaries. It's happening everywhere. Memphis was ranked once again the most dangerous city in America. It's not a title that we want to have. If you had to give a message for those people here in Memphis who are concerned about crime and public safety, and outline your vision for a safer Memphis, what would it be?
Yeah, when it comes to creating safety in our community, it's going to take this twofold approach that I mentioned earlier. We're going to hold people accountable for terrorizing our neighborhoods and communities. As mayor, my goal is to make sure that we're getting them off the streets. And hopefully they go into a criminal justice system that's focused on reform. But my job as mayor is make sure we're getting them off the streets. And that's exactly what we're going to do through all of the tactics that I mentioned earlier. And at the same time, we're going to be thinking about how do we prevent the crime? Because the reality is, if someone picks up a gun and says they want to go rob someone is getting robbed. And that's just the reality. Right. And so in order to offset that, I want to make sure that we are identifying the young people headed down the wrong path and interjecting some opportunities into their lives. And I think that dual approach is what it's going to take. And then the last thing I'll say is that it's going to take urgency. It's going to take a leader that, somebody mentioned to me that, all the candidates sound the same. And it's because, the tactics aren't rocket science. Sure. The things that need to be done aren't that different. Some people may say it more often or, make it the only thing that they say, but the tactics are about the same. The question is, who's going to bring the urgency? Who's going to truly be able to bring people to the table? Who's going to be able to connect with Nashville, with DC, with the places that we're going to need to change some laws to ensure that we're able to get the things done? We need a mayor that has the range to work with everybody, who has a track record of collaboration. And that's something that I bring to the table that none of the other candidates can say that they've done. And you can look at the coalition that we've built to prove it. We have more individual donors than all the other campaigns combined, and they come from all walks of life. This campaign is an example of how we're going to run our administration.
Awesome. I had the opportunity a few weeks ago to meet your beautiful wife, Dr. Jamila Young, a few weeks back. Tell us just a little bit about her and how you guys met.
Oh, she's amazing. We met in college at University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and she's a rock for our family. And, I just love the fact that she has, just bought into the campaign. And it's a big decision because it's life-changing,
right?
To have to, read things about your husband and your family on the internet and hear things in the news. It's not an easy task. And so she's a rock star in her own right, a doctor of nursing practitioner at La Bonheur Children's Hospital, has been working in pulmonology and endocrinology. Sorry, I always mess up on all the medical terms, but I understand. She's in endocrinology now. She used to be in pulmonology, but she's a rock star, man, and I'm proud to have her by my side.
That's awesome. How long have y'all been married?
We've been married since 2007, so 16 years now. But we met in 2000. Well, actually, we met in 99, but we began dating in 2002.
Okay. Took you a little while to be able to get her to go out.
Yeah. She was pulling on my shoulder for a while, and she finally wore me down.
Oh, that's
no,
good.
I'm joking.
She seemed very nice. I talked to her for a few minutes, so that's awesome.
No, she's awesome.
And you guys have two children, Zoe and Paxton. What have
Yeah.
your kids brought to your life?
They brought joy. They are very, very lively. My son, that guy's a character and a half. And my daughter, she's just so inquisitive, and she's all in on this campaign too. She knows everybody in the race. She knows all 17 candidates. But they just bring calm to my life. They give a place of joy, and you can see yourself in them. It's almost like you get to relive your childhood through your kids, through your young people. And it's a special thing.
That's awesome. Once again, I'd like to thank our sponsor for Think Big with Michael Zellner, Platinum Jewelers. They're located at 9387 Poplar Avenue in Germantown. Right as you go through the light at Johnson Road on the right-hand side, they have an unbelievable selection of jewelry at great prices. If you'd like to know more about Paul Young and his vision for Memphis, you can go to his website. I believe it's youngformemphis.com. Is that correct?
That's it. And all the social platforms at Young for Memphis.
Yeah. And so with, early voting starting this past Friday, Paul, I know you're super busy right now in meetings and campaigning. So I really appreciate you coming on Think Big to podcast today and taking your time with us. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. This is one of the best interviews I've done. Great job.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Good luck.
All right. You too.
All right. Take care.